Hey everybody, what's up? Frank Fradella here with you again with the exceptional, the outstanding, the uber talented, and the amazingly good friend of mine, Christopher Madden, who, despite our mix-up in times, is still willing to go ahead and do our lesson today, for which I am immensely grateful. I had the time wrong, so I had this guy waiting around for an hour, and he's still willing to go forward with the lesson. Super cool guy. Love them a lot. So today we're delving into an entirely new skill set for me. We're talking about environments. I noticed, and I've noticed this for a long time, honestly, that I have a lot of people in my portfolio. Like you look through my sketchbook, it's nothing but people and mostly faces, right? Like the further down you get down the body, the less I'm good at, because like I never get down to the feet. Like I don't even know if I've ever drawn a foot ever. So I said, Chris, let's do something I've never done, something I'm horrible at. Let's do environments. And Chris is like, yeah, totally not a thing, not a problem. Sure, do it all the time, because Chris is that guy. So, so here we are, Christopher Madden, Frank Fradella, art lesson number 3, talking about environments. Chris, take it away.
Okay, well, so I've got, yes, you can see my screen, yes?
I can.
Good. Okay, so what I'm looking at is the 6 pieces that you sent me, which represent a diverse set of color palettes, but kind of all in the same theme. The professor in me wants to point out that they're all vertical compositions, and they're all city-based. So I'm seeing a common thread in the sort of thing you want to paint, and I want to zero in on what you want to paint so I understand a little more about how to go about doing it.
Sure.
So what do you like about these? Yeah.
I actually have a wide variety of environmental art, but I picked these 6 because they are similar. And as a student, I noticed that the further in the background things were, the lighter they got. That you know, there's a whole bunch of things here that I'm aware of, like, you know, objects in the foreground like create this sense of depth, and like, you know, there's a lot of things about this that I noticed, but I'm sure that there's, like, I don't know how to build this. Like, I don't know where to start. So I figured this would be a good place because they're all similar. They're all, you're right, vertical compositions. Like the camera's like pretty, you know, nearly at the horizon or just a little bit above. So yeah, let's see how to build one of these things.
Well, so it depends. Some of these are constructed in different ways, and there'll be subtle differences, but they would influence how you would go about replicating them or being inspired by. So if we take a look at this purple one here, this is the one that caught my eye because this is closest to how I tend to paint. This is, I can almost guarantee, not using photographic reference. This is probably starting with a sketch, a quick line sketch that they went in layered color on top of after the fact. This is closest to how I would go about constructing an image. Cool. So the next one we look at is this one from 2009, is the Ubisoft. So I can't remember which Assassin's Creed this is from, but it's definitely from one of them. This is probably using a photographic source for some of its colors. The things that catch my attention are the fact that this that red flag there is pretty darn faded, as are the greens here, and a really nice subtle blue haze in the background, which tells me they're probably pulling from some photographs that they found, finding some inspiration there, because those aren't off the cuff colors. Those colors are probably selected from something. This one could go either way. This one looks like it started from a sketch as well. I'm guessing this one followed the same path as this purple one did, which is you start from a sketch and then you start layering color on top of it. Okay. These ones all strike me as starting with a photographic template, not necessarily painting right on top of it, although this one here, that may actually be a render. It's hard to tell. But these 3 here look like they started from, they found a photo that they liked and decided, hey, we're gonna make this area more fantastic. Cool. And so the question I have is they're both totally valid methods of environment concepting. Would you rather start from an imaginary point and a blank canvas and start creating a landscape, or would you rather start with a landscape that inspires you and modify it?
So let's say that the very first picture that you picked out, the one that's a little looser, a little rougher, yeah, that was the one. I think that might have been the last picture I sent you, because I stopped when I hit that one. I was like, this.
Right, found it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Okay, so let's start from that. That one's fairly easy. That's sort of classic speed paint style. Speed painting, I'm sure, is something you're familiar with.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see here. I tend to work in horizontal compositions, so that's what I'm going to do because I'm weird like that, which is great. Okay, 90. Jesus. There we go. So I'm going to save this as scale as a ref. Okay. So let's see. What strikes your fancy? Would you want to go with this sort of? I can't tell if this is like London or Shanghai or some sort of 17th, 18th century thing.
Yeah. So So there are two things that I really find compelling. I like that pagoda style roof, and I like things with ships in them, like sailing ships. So maybe some kind of I don't know if you're looking for inspiration here, but maybe like some kind of Chinese pirate thing.
Okay.
Vibe. Pirates Cove for Chinaman, Shanghai.
Yeah. Let's see what we can find here.
So I'm guessing your first step involves going to look for reference.
Yeah, mostly it's going to tell me how the buildings are constructed. Here's an interesting. Let me see what I can find here. There's a whole bunch of these. Let's see. I've got. Well, that's pretty cool. So I'll drag this guy over. This is it's like some sort of a port building or port authority in Shanghai or China. There's a couple of these here, buildings built on stilts. That's not what I wanted. That might be good reference points. They all seem to share sort of the similar roof structure that you're talking about. Right. Some temples there. That's pretty cool. So I think that's worth starting with right there. This one's cool. Teeny tiny, but it's not a bad reference point. All right.
Because we're not photo bashing here. We're looking for reference, right?
Yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong with photo bashing, but yeah, that's mostly what I'm doing is trying to figure out what I want this place to look like. So we like the. I'm going to minimize this guy. We like sort of the. Let's see. I'm guessing we like the twilight stuff. We like the low light because it lends kind of a romantic atmosphere to everything.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I'm going to start by dropping my canvas down to about 50%, just because then I can go dark and light.
Okay.
Let's see.
Oh, neat. Okay. So I already see what you're doing. This is cool.
So now what I'm going to do is just the really basic stuff. I'm just going to start scribbling and see what I come up with. Let's see. Well, horizon is probably a little lower because up here we know that the horizon is here-ish. They want to be able to build up a lot vertically, so we'll probably start doing the same. So that means we need to add in some buildings. And I don't think they gave a whole lot of thought in this piece to exactly how everything was constructed. You had some buildings on the water with their pointy roofs. Let's see, got some interesting towers there.
Are you talking about the original one on the right?
Yeah, mostly I'm looking at this one here, this reference photo, and trying to figure out kind of what rules they followed to get to it. Mm-hmm. So they've got a bunch of these buildings in the background here. They got this nice glowing port with lots of lights in it.
Right.
So I like the idea of having one closer or up front. Let's see here. So mostly
this object here on the left, this will be the darkest one, right?
This one here?
Yeah.
Probably. So what you're talking about, the term for it, and I don't know why it's called this because it's a dumb term, is atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective, or sfumato in the original Italian. It just means things get lighter as they go towards the horizon. It means in perspective.
Is that the SFM?
Yeah.
Sfumato?
Yeah. Sfumato, which I always thought was a type of ice cream. the sfumato simply means that as things approach infinity, the atmosphere is greater because there's more air between you and them, so they tend to get lighter and bluer.
Cool.
Really, really nice, really simple thing to follow.
That's great. That's helpful right away.
So let's see if we can. Okay, so we've got a bunch of buildings down on the waterfront here, and then we need to figure out what's going to go in the background there. I don't want to just simply duplicate what they got.
Right.
Let's see.
One of the things that I do notice that I like a lot on these things, and why there's so many like of these bridges or archways, is because it tends to focus the eye at something in the distance.
Yeah, very much so. That one's
and I find that to be a really appealing thing. I like that in architecture. I like it in life. You know, like when I'm traveling, like I see something like that, and like immediately I just stop and look.
Yeah, that one's nice. So, out of curiosity, are you in your mind, because we're in fantasy concept land here, are you picturing something that's real, was set in the real world, that's believable, or is this fantastical and it can go any way you want?
No, you can go any way you want. I'm interested to see what this turns into.
Because I found this as a concept speed paint, and it's cool how they've got some interesting sort of towering buildings there that aren't possible in the real world.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that a lot.
So we've got some buildings here.
Yeah, and I've seen some speed paints where they'll take like actual architecture and then just build on top of it to make it more fantastical.
Oh yeah, that's really common. So what we're doing?
Like, why do twice the work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the rule, at least when it comes to concept art, is I was always against photo bashing in general, just because it felt wrong. And I think we've talked about this in the past. All that matters in concept art is that, for the most part, you get to the result as quickly as humanly possible. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to test an idea, and the concept art is not generally going to be the final product.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter if it's the perfect, unique expression of that idea. It just needs to test whether or not the idea is valid. In fact, in many cases, I have friends who worked on, or friends of friends who worked on The Force Awakens, the new Star Wars movie, and they did concept art for it. And one of the things that kind of surprised me is for the desert planet, the mandate that came down from the art director was don't paint a desert. Just, I need you to go and take screen grabs of spaghetti westerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then just paste in the Millennium Falcon. That's really what we're going for. They wanted realism, and they wanted believability, and they didn't want to wait and have someone try and invent something. They really just wanted it to feel like the desert or the Old West. And I don't know, the concept artist in me thinks, oh dear God, there's no chance to practice art. But then I remember that that's not really the point in a lot of this stuff. The point is that you get there as quickly as possible. So the next thing that I'm going to want to do as I start to explore this, and I'm just sort of starting to build up here, is what kind of palette we want. So
how about reds? It's China.
I like it. I think if I could spell, that would help. Okay. Reds. Here's a nice palette. I'm going to look at something like this. This is going to be our source of inspiration for palettes. That's
just by FYI, I'm turning my camera off because I've got a bad internet connection, so I don't want to clog it.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so this piece here that I'm duplicating over is what I'm going to reference as a color palette. So we're going to work through these sort of yellows and purples towards this sort of blood red in the background. And that'll be the source for our inspiration here. Let's see, I'm going to duplicate these over just so I don't lose them. When and if Photoshop crashes, I've still got a pernicious bug that just will not leave me alone. So saved off.
I'm having this horrible lag on my end where, like, I hear you talking and I hear you doing things, but then like every 5 minutes, all of a sudden the picture will change, like you've done work, and like I didn't see any of it.
Oh dear. Well, that's not good.
It's okay. I'm like piecing it together, but like I'm hoping that this is recording better than I'm seeing it.
At least when I move things on my end, I'm seeing it update live in the little picture. So let's desperately hope that's happening. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna
Roger?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Keeping here. So let's see. The overall things that I'm getting from this piece is if you remove the color information, you just drop the saturation out. It definitely gets darker in the front, lighter in the background. Right? It's following those basic rules. And there are very few times throughout the day or any circumstances where it's going to be any different than that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some black and I'm going to darken up my foreground because that seems to be what they're doing. We got a fairly dark ground plane here because that water's reflecting pretty dark. So I'm going to darken it up there too.
Mm.
And if we notice that underneath these buildings, that goes almost black.
Right.
Right. That really sort of disappears down there. So the rest of it is, let's see, what's my reference say?
So now, do concept artists tend to specialize, like you're either a character artist or an environment artist, or?
I've seen that happen. It depends on the studio. It usually doesn't happen. I mean, any concept artist that I know that sort of, is worth their weight and worth their salt is all-purpose, mostly because you don't see a lot of call for single-use concept artists, unless I'll amend that, unless the studio is huge, in which case they can afford to split up the disciplines like that, but it doesn't usually happen.
Yeah. Wow, that little black shading that you did made a world of difference.
It's funny. It starts to. It's all the little tricks that kind of build up.
Yeah, like all of a sudden it just starts to come together. It's so cool.
And what's bothering me now is I think something about this composition just feels a little lacking. I need something more interesting to be looking at. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm just guessing, is I'm going to lighten up this stuff over here, and maybe I'll make one big building on the horizon. Something interesting that we can look at that's got maybe multiple levels here. Like a giant pagoda, something like that.
Yeah. If you just want to do a quick Google search for Beijing Bell Tower, that's a building in the
Beijing.
Yeah.
What's it called?
The Bell Tower?
Bell Tower.
Yeah. Something dong something.
Let's see. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll do something like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's big and square. It's got oops. There we go. That's a big square building with lots of spikies on it. That's pretty cool. Those are all technical terms. Yeah, big square building with spikies. So let's see. We're starting to work up our horizon. We've got where's the reference point? We've got little buildings down here. Might have some spikities on them. And moving down towards the water. And as we get closer to the water, we get more and more of this dark gray color that's telling us we're getting further from the further towards the camera from the atmosphere. So there's less clogging the path.
So would you lighten up that sky a little bit behind the bell tower?
I could if I wanted. So at some point, I'm going to want to create more depth, and if I want to push this bell tower way back there, yeah, that would be the quickest way I can think of to do it.
Cool.
To drop it back.
Yeah, I'm just testing my instincts at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the way to go. Boy, I realized I have probably never painted a Chinese-style building before, and they are very intricate. Let's see what we got here. One of those, a little bit of a tower here, maybe I see some spikety spires here. Those are a little more European, but they're compelling. Okay, so now a lot of this, same with the character concept art. There's a lot that you can do with just nonsense scribbles to sort of imply that there's detail there, which is happening over here. There's very little detail in much of that painting.
Yeah. God, look at that. Look how you brought that all together just so quickly.
I'm just relying on the correct perspective and the horizon plane and just a little bit of scribbling here to make it look like there's buildings. Now, the other thing that can be done is I've got these vertical lines in the background here, all following a form. I can trim those up negative space and turn those into buildings if necessary, which is
look at that. Cool.
Fairly useful.
That's a neat trick.
In fact, I can do the same thing over here if I want to add, let's say I wanted to add a little bit of a bridge or canal system. Let's get some white. That's too light. That's too light. Okay, we'll try that. I mean, that's a cheap trick, and it's a way to add more depth in there. And it's all very, very fake.
Okay, it hasn't shown up on my screen yet. I'm excited to see it.
Okay, yeah. This is the point where I realize I'm creating way too many layers, and way too few layers is what I'm saying. And so it's all in one layer, and that's when I get nervous. So I create a new layer.
Cool.
So we started to create. Let me know when you update. That's troublesome that you're not seeing much.
No, that's okay. Where did you do? Where is the last thing that you did? Where did you put that?
Last thing that I did was back here.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's super neat.
And that's very useful for just sort of faking depth.
Right.
Big building right here.
Nice.
There's a little walkway here with some railings. The other thing that I notice about this is terrible. This is so Eurocentric of me. But when I look at the Chinese buildings, one of the major things that I see is, to my Western eye, it all looks fairly curvilinear and kind of cattywampus. It feels like it's leaning and bending and distorting. And it's not. They're relatively square, or in this case octagonal buildings, but the angle, the slope in the roof makes them feel like they've got some bend to them. And so that's something that I would tend to want to carry over, even making some of these buildings bow out just a touch. And it's something that I would want to say, it's not necessarily in the original, but it's the feeling that the original gives me, and that's something that I would want to try and replicate.
Right. Cool.
So we're rapidly approaching the point here where it would be smart of me to apply a color palette. I think the next thing I want to do is, let's see. I'm Googling junks so I can figure out the type of boat I want to put in the harbor. Boy, those are some cool looking boats.
Aren't they?
They really are, yeah.
Yeah. Those are some cool sail configurations and stuff. Look at that.
Yeah, I love it. All right.
So badass, yeah.
So I'm gonna add a junk here. It'll probably be something I'll want to add like a lantern onto later. We'll assume this guy is about mid composition here, heading towards the far bank there. And he's got 1, 2, 3. Looks like 3 masts. And I'll just scribble one here. This is mostly just a block in where I want these things to go. And okay, so there's the start of our junk. And I want to go in there, and that's going to be a case of, since the eye knows there's small detail there, or the brain knows there's going to be small detail there, I'll probably want to spend a fair amount of my art capital on my calories on detailing out that boat.
Cool.
Just enough so it feels like it's when you look at it, there's something there.
Right.
Now, there's a lot that we can do. For example, composition is at one scale there. Composition is at a very different scale if we shrink that guy down.
Yeah.
So we can make this place huge. I tend to want to make it just a little smaller, because one of the general rules of fantasy and sci-fi concept art is you take something that should be small and you make it really big. That's it. That's the whole shtick. Most of good sci-fi invention is taking shapes that belong on small things like engine turbines or
Right.
windmills or arches, and you just make them so big that they could never possibly be built that way, and people go, "Oh, sci-fi, cool, I get
it." Yeah, it's so funny because like I think one of the first pieces I ever saw from NC Wyeth, I think it's Wyeth, is there's somebody on a beach, and in the distance, on the horizon, you see this shadowy figure of a giant walking. And it's so far away that it clearly doesn't, it's not aware of the humans that are observing it.
Mm-hmm.
But like the size and scope of this thing is just, it's a breathtaking piece.
Yeah. That's scale is one of the best ways to sell awe in art.
Yeah, agreed.
So all I've done here so far.
So like already I'm thinking like, you know, when we start to light this thing up, because I think that that's what I really like about these twilight pictures is that you get these twinkly little lights on the water and you get these like atmospheric blips in the background. And like, you know, it's, you know, if there's some kind of atmosphere in there, then like that light gets diffused and it kind of lights, it just kind of like, oh, it just gets so yummy.
Well, there's a lot of really smart things that they're doing with this piece, and I think they're just doing them instinctually. So if you take a look at this right now, your lighting environment. So, okay, someone really smart once tried to explain how to build a functional lighting environment, and the general rule is, here, we'll do this here. So I have a cube. We're painting a cube in space.
Yeah.
There's a cube. And it's got we'll do a rounded cube because it's easier to understand. There's a rounded cube, so it's got 4 sides. And if this cube is going to exist in this space, we'll say it's a medium gray cube because that makes sense. So in this environment, a medium gray cube would be, if we look at its environment, we're getting like a light blue cast in this direction. We're getting an even lighter blue, a very, very nearly white blue cast in the top direction. We're getting almost black cast in this direction. Let me draw that. And then from the bottom, we're getting in between black and other colors, we're getting like this nice peachy glow. And I've heard this referred to as, this is probably much darker than I'm making it. In fact, this could go way darker. But that's sort of what this environment is telling me, is we've got like a soft glow coming from above. Oh, sorry, from below, a soft peachy glow. It's occasionally picking up highlights. And that's roughly what you're encountering in this environment.
Yeah, cool.
And
so I mean,
you can
that's cool. Like you just like with one cube, like okay, so wherever I'm painting, I know what I'm doing now.
Right, and so generally what you do is it can be really difficult to work your way around complex objects. But when I started dabbling in 3D modeling and rendering, it really helped me wrap my brain around things. So if I say, okay, well, I want to draw. There's a giant egg in this scene. Sure, we need to paint a giant egg. We have to figure out what colors it is. Well, that egg is probably going to receive blue light from above, medium blue light from the side, mostly black over here, and just a touch of peachy underglow. And that egg will suddenly feel like it belongs in this environment. And I've heard that referred to as the, I believe it's A side, B side, C, and D. And it kind of doesn't matter how you assign the labels, but it helps you say, okay, if I'm, or north, south, east, west, whatever cardinal directions you want to apply, it helps you say, okay, this I've got a cube and it's roughly in perspective like this, give or take. I know exactly what I need each of these sides. This is going to be receiving the A side. This is the B. The D is invisible, and the C is on the top. And it gives you the ability to go through and start rendering color, or at least shape. Sorry, not shape, tone accurately.
Yeah, that's cool. So All right. So one of the things that I find absolutely magical in our original reference piece is the way that they kind of suggest water, right? It's
Hmm.
waves. Like we've got like this kind of gradation there, but like how do you turn that into water?
I will show you. That's actually one of the easiest parts. So I'm expanding my
Beautiful.
canvas over here because I think there's a lot that can be done with the right side that I was sort of wasting. Um, even though it's at night, this reminds me of the um, just a moment. I'm looking up Thomas Moran's Venice. I think we talked about him in the past. I'm going to send you a nice old search here. Thomas Moran was I'm not even going to try and remember, 16, 1700, something like that. And he painted Venice a whole bunch here.
Okay.
And his compositions are just gorgeous. He's got a sort of JMW Turner ability to capture sky and cloud and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And his compositions are all roughly analogous, but he's got ways of building out the space that draw the eye in. And what I want to do is I want to try and replicate it. So there's a couple of things that he's doing here. His composition runs.
Wow.
So you get a little blip here, and then you get a big old spikety object in the middle that drops
Right.
below the horizon line, something small. And then if you notice, oops, that's not what I wanted. This is basically a giant compositional arrow that's saying, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Right.
And there are humans in the middle of that saying that there are human stakes. Please pay attention to whatever that thing is in the middle. So it makes me think that there's probably something that can be done with a similar compositional arrow here. So if I wanted to follow this format for this guy, I'm not guaranteed it's going to work. This is off the cuff. What I would probably say would be we would want something angled over here, maybe say a bigger junk, like a ginormous one here sticking out. A nice big one here. That's a nice angled part of the composition. We'll say this guy's way over here. And we'll bring the buildings down behind him.
Yeah, maybe you can put like because the aft of the ship is wider than the front of the ship. Maybe you can put like the ass of that ship right in that corner.
Yeah. Where did I put that junk?
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, we'll say, all right, well, they're kind of curved, aren't they? So one of these. Okay, we're gonna put. Whoop. All right, so there's another ship in the corner there. I might actually move this over ever so slightly so we can get a little more space over here.
Sure. And I love how you're doing this on separate layers. So like you can move this thing, you can scale it, you can do it like it's just brilliant.
Oh yeah. Cheap trick. And then now that I think about it, probably I have to alter my perspective slightly. Probably the best way to create that arrow is with a wake. I mean, it's free.
Oh.
You don't need to explain it. Also with shadow, so I could come up here and I say, okay, we'll create a wake coming out of the back of that boat. We'll say that's coming roughly that direction. And I'm just going to erase away the edges. Oops, erase away the edges. So there's my compositional arrow, and I can distort that to create whatever perspective I need.
You're so fucking good. It's crazy.
Well, I'm doing a lot of cheating, but yeah, we'll say something like that, and we'll probably drop that way down. But now what we've done is we've created some uneven compositions. Up here, we created an interesting space here. We created a spike here. In fact,
so where I would have like literally crippled myself with like self-doubt would be like I would have to have my perspective exactly right. I was going to have to I have to know my 3-point perspective, 4-point perspective. Like I've got to do lines and I've got to do these lines. Like all of a sudden I'm not interested anymore. Right?
I'm the same way, and I will tell you my perspective is my kryptonite. I've never quite wrapped my head around it. I know the rules. I just don't know when and how to apply them. And it's gotten me in a fair amount of trouble. But the amazing thing is I've noticed other artists, I'll go on a diatribe here. There are many things that I wouldn't attempt because I thought that they had to be done a certain way. And I just assumed that if there was an artist who was a professional artist who was worth his druthers, who'd gotten where he was, it was because he had all of his ducks in a row. And I think the thing that probably got me the deepest was when I saw an artist, an artist I was very, very enamored with, a personal friend of mine, Mark Sealander, was trying to draw a circle. And he sat there, we were talking. I don't know, is my screen updating? Can you see me?
I don't know. I don't know.
Seeing
done
movement here?
No.
Okay, that's unfortunate. Well, he was trying to draw a circle, and he would just start to draw it and then hit undo, and then start to draw it and hit undo, and start to draw it and hit undo. And he probably drew the shape like 30 or 40 times, just hitting undo each time until he got it right. And I had just assumed that an artist was supposed to do it right the first time. And apparently no one ever bothered to tell him. And he avoided all of that stress by just doing it however it occurred to him, which is do it wrong a bunch of times until it clicks. And he was an established artist who was able to do that. And it's the same thing I've found with the perspective thing. I tend to freeze up when it comes to perspective. There are other artists that I'm huge fans of, friends and coworkers of mine, who just launch into it without thinking about that stuff at all. And I've asked before, I'm like, aren't you going to get yourself in trouble? Like, I'll fix it later. If the drawing is worth fixing, I'll fix the perspective. I was like, whoa, okay. So I think what we're going to do here is I think it's time to apply the color palette. Let's see if we can cause some trouble. So I'm going to do this. Are you familiar with gradient map?
Yeah. Okay,
great. So I'm going to gradient map this. And I'm going to do it as an adjustment layer because then I can change it. Nice. So I'm going to apply a gradient map over the top. And let's see if I'm doing this right. Yeah, I know. Am I still not updating?
No, you're updating.
Okay, good. Let's see if I can get this right. So I want this color. My blacks are going to be black. And I think my whites are going to be some sort of a peachy red color.
Oh, man, look at that already.
Now I'm going to cheat here. My midtones, I'm going to add some fine midtones, are going to be like a diffuse purple here. So this is going to change drastically because I actually have no white in my image. So the full extent, the far right of my gradient map is not going to be used yet. Yet, it will be. So I'm going to drop this down and get more of a saturated color here. Get better results. And then looks like down here, there's a little bit of yellow. I don't know. I'm going to give this a try and see what happens. So what I can do now is because that gradient ramp is being applied, and you understand the logic sort of behind gradient ramps, obviously.
I do.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten the image underneath and give it more white, more high range for that orange to bite onto. So if I go in here and I paint white under the image, it's going to go full red.
Sure.
All right, so there's a rough color palette. We're missing some yellow, but I can go back and add that later.
Yeah, that just updated. Holy shit, that looks great.
Let's see if I can do blending options here. Blending options. There we go. Dial it back just a touch so we get some of that red. So I think, okay, I'm going to call that reasonably good for now. I got a good range on the piece. I can go in and I'm going to add just a touch of yellow in the sky because I think it helps. And I'm going to do a trick here for clouds. Am I updating?
I can't tell you.
Okay. So there's a trick for clouds here where I'm going to paint the negative, then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to erase the positive.
Okay.
Wow, it's a shame that you're not able to see anything.
Because I'm being brilliant right now. Trust me.
Oh man, you would You just have to take my word for it. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. All right. So that just updated. So like I see this bright spot in the sky. It looks beautiful.
Right. So all I did was
this piece is already just like, oh, so good.
I'm doing a lot of cheating here. So what I did was, now that you're seeing it, is I painted a little bit of gold there, and then I just went in and erased what I didn't want. I sort of painted what was behind the clouds. So
yeah, cool.
Now I think it's time. Go ahead.
Right. So my question now, or my assumption now, is that rather than painting these little light sources on the original image, because that would be underneath the gradient map, we're going to do that on top of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
The general rule that I found, other than little tricks like the gradient map where I went in and modified the white balance underneath, generally, once I've added a layer, I don't go back, because it's like once you laid the foundation, you don't want to go digging under there because you might screw something up. At least that's my general rule. So let's see what kind of trouble I can get into. So you're enamored with that water, and we're going to see what we can do here. Now that we have a palette, and we know that we're going to need some red reflected in this here water. So yeah, so this is generally it's just going to be a lot of little tiny strokes, and of course the strokes get smaller the further from the camera that you get. Generally, we also get a reflection, which means if we're looking at this little pagoda building here, that's going to get reflected. We're going to get pillar reflections underneath the building there.
Yeah.
Anything that's dark is going to remain dark underneath. I'm basically doing the Happy Little Friends version of the Bob Ross here, but that's okay. Bob, I'm sure you've watched him. That guy drives me nuts. I love him so much. It's because every time you watch him, you walk away thinking, I can do this.
Right.
And it's just the false sense of hope that he instills in you every time before bringing you crashing back down to earth. It's just not fair.
So now, okay, so this isn't updating as quickly as I'd like, but what I'm getting here is that, like, for the highlights on the waves, I'm going to use that reddish color, but then I also want to show shadows on these waves, right? Like where
Right. So let's do a little study again. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a wave front, and we're going to look at a wave front in cross section. This is the way my brain tends to process things. So I'm looking at a wave front here.
Yeah.
And this is our camera is here.
Yep.
Looking at it, and this wavefront let's see, we're getting black on this side. We're generally getting purple on the top side, and then we're getting that bright red color fading to slight purple.
Yeah.
On the side facing away from us. So what I'm doing to replicate that is wherever there's a wave crest, it's getting, let's probably zoom in here. Yeah, it's getting a small hit of this red or a little bit of the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And then wherever there's a deep trough, or the backside of the wave, we're getting just a hint of black, which is reflecting generally us, or our position, where the camera's back is to, which is much, much darker.
Right.
Then obviously there's less that has to be done where the water's calm, and there's more that has to be done where the water's rough, because that's where the most turbulence is going to be found.
Yeah.
And then little things like, obviously there's no red over here because there's no way, all these buildings in the way, there's no way to reflect that light.
Yeah.
Reflect the sky.
I've noticed you've done nearly this entire thing at like 50% of the size, because we're trying to indicate things rather than render them.
Right. So that's generally what I do is I'll block in at about 50%, even 25% scale, depending on how I'm feeling, and then I'll go in and I'll add detail where it needs to be. Add again the Rembrandt detail. What are the three areas that interest me the most? That's what I want to focus on.
Huh.
So now we get to do the fun stuff, which is lighting this thing.
Yeah,
lights. I'm just gonna Google lights on the water. Um, so there's a quick way and probably a good way to do this. The quick way would just, and I'll show you how it works here. Lights, city lights on the water, port lights. What do I got here? Port lights.
Are you going to photo bash it?
That would be the quick way. Honestly, if I was short on time,
And just drop the thing on there, set it to screen, and walk away?
I mean, within reason, yeah, that's probably pretty close to what I'd end up doing. Because this part can be fairly time-consuming.
Sure.
But it's also, these are the tasks that I would usually set aside as being enjoyable, the things that I would want to do. So let's see if I can get this right. So yeah, if I were going to do this quickly, I'd paste in some, whatever that is, set it to screen, shrink it down, put little levels on it. Hue set, because it's a little sharp there. So I mean, that would be a relatively quick way of doing this whole thing. Maybe there's even some lights on the boat. Who knows? There you go.
I would imagine there would be lanterns.
Like you're talking like the Chinese Lantern Festival kind of floating stuff? We can do that.
No, I meant like lanterns on the boat, because boat. You know.
Yeah.
Same thing with that building on the right there. But that's already so cool. Look at that.
So I mean, again, this is where that actually didn't turn out too bad. What I probably end up doing now is grabbing some of these and let's see, what part do I like? I need some lights up here. Probably a nice light here. And all I'm doing is grabbing chunks of this and duplicating around the image.
Yeah.
To get the impression that there's, oops, not what I wanted. There's lights in and around the city.
Right.
But, so that's a quick pass. And what I would probably do now is go back in, set it to screen, grab some light. And I have a particular way of doing this is I set it to screen. So by screening, I'm painting on a nice red color, a nice orange color. I'll probably make that a little more yellow, more believable. But I also set my painting mode to screen. So what that does is I lay down yellow, and then if I lay down yellow again, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. So that way I can actually paint all the way up to white by just continuing to hit the same spot. But there's a trick to it. If you're in the upper right corner of the saturation window here, if you're fully saturated and you keep screening the same thing, it'll never actually go to white because mathematically it can't get there. So the trick is you want to make it just shy of full saturation. And then if you keep painting, you'll eventually get to white.
That's fascinating.
It's just a little painting trick that I've picked up over the years. Let's see if I can add some pretty lights here. Where do we need lights? We need some lights inside that building, I think.
Yeah, but not on the front side, right? On the left side facing the boat.
Yeah, I need to figure out how big that building is. So if it's probably pretty darn big.
Yeah, that's either 2 or 3 stories, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking here.
And this is cool because you can actually indicate how many stories there are by the placement of lights and stuff.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fake. It's just enough to lead the eye into thinking there's something there.
Right. So cool.
We got some lanterns here, and then of course that's going to need to be.
This is a beautiful piece, Chris.
It's not bad for a quick sketch that I did not plan at all. The death knell of a speed painting is usually not, when you don't plan, it does not often come out okay. But
sure.
Let's see here. So now we've got
not Chris Madden. No, sir.
Not that guy.
Not that guy.
Get some highlights in the water. And you suggested a lantern on the boat, which I think is a great idea.
Oh, thanks.
I like it, and we're gonna.
Does that boat need Oh, wow. Look at that. Jesus. God, that's so gorgeous.
Light on
Wow.
the stern there. So we're doing a lot of cheating here, but that's okay. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So, so this big building on our right,
Mm-hmm.
the one, the 3-story one.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm kibitzing here, but like I think it needs like a little red flag on the top of that pole.
Which pole? This one here, or this one?
That I can't. You're not moving for me. So the tallest
I'm
one.
sorry. The tallest one. I see you. Yeah. Let's see what we can do there. Let's see what we can do there. So because I am not a color first sort of guy, what I probably end up doing is painting a red flag because it makes sense to me. And then maybe
not that one. Not that one.
Oh, that we're gonna go over here. Here.
I can't see. You're not moving again.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay.
Okay, so the 3-story pagoda on the water,
right,
has a spire on top.
Ah, yes. Gotcha.
I just thought that needed a little flag.
So I've added a flag there, and now what I'm going to do is drop it back. Color balance.
Yeah, because that side's facing us, it'll probably have to be darker in areas to indicate it's, folding with the wind or whatever.
That's true, yeah. Drop it back, drop it back, drop it back. So yeah, we'll get some.
So cool.
It's a nice cheap trick there. So I'm trying to figure out what else this guy needs. We need a little more detail on this boat in the back. That one needs our attention, needs a little love. So, because I'm still not entirely sure that it's a boat, and I'm the one to put it there. So what I think the best thing that I could do for it is bring it out away from the background. So what I'm going to do is get a little fog here, some of this deep purple fog. I'm going to paint fog around it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm going to erase said fog. I'm going to make a mask on there. I'm going to paint my boat back into it. So if I... Now I've got just a little bit offsetting it there. Now we can see there's just a little bit of, maybe it's fog, maybe it's smoke, maybe it's just mist off the water that's separating us out. And now, probably do is go about just detailing that guy up. So obviously needs some help here. So if I were to paint this color in and drop it way down, probably about there. So get some nice red sails. This red may be a little too rich for this environment. I haven't decided yet. So right now what I'm doing is, I always forget to talk through what I'm doing. It's not a natural skill that I'm used to. So I'm going through and I'm adding just the tiniest little bits and bobblies, we call them greeblies, to make it look like there's structure here. The fewest number of lines that'll make it look like there's shape to it, there's form. I think one of the artists I shared previously, his name is Craig Mullins, is the master of this. He's the guy who, when you zoom in on his work, it looks like purple, and when you zoom in, it's like high saturation green and yellow painted over the top of each other with a little bit of brown. He just knows how to completely lie when it comes to colors and shape and detail.
Fantastic.
And generally, that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm just going in and I'm trying to fool the eye into, especially into these low light conditions where you don't really know if you're seeing detail or not. You're not sure if that's real. Trying to fool the eye into thinking there's something here. A lot of it's just little itty bitty tiny brush strokes that don't really mean anything. Maybe some, let's see, I need a big mast here. Straight up here.
Now, are we going to make this whole thing darker?
We can't. So that's you've come across one of the banes of concept art is that nobody's screen is calibrated the same way, and there are oftentimes you'll think you have the perfect dark balance, and you'll show it on a monitor. You'll get it looked at and realize that your painting has huge holes in it where it just goes to crunchy black, or you've omitted detail where you shouldn't have. So I might, pardon me while I check this. Oh, wow. I'm checking that against my other monitor, and that is not at all what I'm seeing. Cintiq's, at least my Cintiq, tends to skew a little dark.
Yeah.
So most of...
Well, yeah, I mean, what I noticed was, like, up until this moment, you had, like, this arrow pointing at this one chunk in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you started to work on the sails on this thing, all of a sudden, like, that color got a little brighter, and it just started to pull focus away from what I had originally thought was, like, the focus of our piece.
The hero, right? The hero shot. Yeah. So you're right. What'll need to happen then is, now that I've got this detail in there, I'll have to go back in and darken this back up, because it's, now that I'm seeing it, I checked it against my other monitor, it's stealing way too much focus.
Yeah.
So that is a good catch. What I'll probably do here is get some lighter cross beams.
Yeah, this boat needs to be put in its place.
Yeah,
Strictly a sneak boat.
Yeah, it's taking way too much focus here.
That's right. Hero support, not the hero.
So then I've got at least enough detail to make believe that that's a boat. I will, cheapest way that I know to do this is to set a new layer to overlay, grab a nice gradient black, and just paint it down.
Right.
So that's probably too much.
Oh, I don't know.
Check it against my other mouth. That's not bad. I could drop it back by a touch.
Yeah, there it is. Right?
Yeah, you think so?
No, wait. Take it back one.
Take it back? No, back to about...
Just one step.
How's that feel?
That feels... What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. And I've just checked against my other monitor, and it tends to go away like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So let's see here. What am I missing? Well, I know I'm missing that beautiful hot red sun, which is something that I would want to get in there.
Okay.
And I think I'll just paint that at full opacity. I think that belongs right about here. Circle. And that's going to be bright yellow. So, I mean, I can move that kind of where it needs to be, but I think that's
just so hot.
Get dude, that's going to be in the water too.
Just stop touching. Stop. You're crazy, man.
There we go.
Wow.
Just a little bit of sparkle. God, I do sound like Bob Ross. Whew. So the next thing that will probably be done is now that the basics of the piece are in place.
Yeah.
Aha, don't you dare Photoshop. You can't trick me. I say it early and often. Just a moment. That's not it. What is that garbage? Let's try nice landscape. Landscape?
Oh, hey, congratulations on your house, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That is the most stressed out I think I've ever been.
So it's so funny when you announced that you were getting evicted from your house. I literally the first thing that I thought was, okay, so what's right about this you're not getting? Like, because like I knew this was coming, right? I knew this was the opportunity that you knew was down the line, but you weren't ready to pull the trigger on it yet.
Right.
And now Mama Bird just kicked you out of the nest, and now you got to fly.
That's the upside of this. That's what I'm trying to see as the positive of the whole thing.
Totally positive. It's awesome.
So what we need here is, let's see, find this ref again. Shrink that down. All right, copy this over. So now what we need is we just need a little more detail. Now that the basics of the composition are there, now we can go in and just add some more nonsense. So I'm trying to look at what they've got in this piece. They've got some nice spires. Let's see.
Don't forget to share your screen, sir.
Oh, have I not yet? Aha. Thank you.
You're a handsome man, Chris, but
so you haven't seen anything since Photoshop crashed, huh?
Right.
Okay, let's try this again. So let's see. We got some spires here. There's some. We can get some nice shingles on this building. We're just going to go in and add enough detail that you buy it, and maybe maybe this comes up here and it's got a little thing on it. Yeah, just all those little details that make you believe it's true.
Right.
That's usually all it takes. Maybe some more structure to this guy here. I think some shingles on that building. And if you notice, that's what a lot of what's going on, say, over on this piece here. A lot of that curved roof is just scribble lines.
Right.
And those are this is the point where it becomes hard to tell if a piece is done, because there's always more scribbling that can be added. And that's why when you're doing a speed paint like this, it can be nice to say, I'm going to cap myself at 30 minutes because that's all the detail I'm going to give it. Because a speed paint can easily turn into, an hour or 2 or 5.
Right. Yeah.
There's also something really nice that they've done in this piece. Let me add a little more detail here. In the original piece, and they've added some smoke, or some mist right on the water. We can replicate that to a certain degree by going in. Let's see.
So I kind of like it. Almost feels like what they did was they hit the lights with a little with smudge, with a little blur, just to kind of make it look like that light, the light source is being diffused by smoke.
They did, and they can. So there's a couple of tricks there. One of which is to go in and literally paint like a glow around the lights, like you'd get like mist in the harbor and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Picking up a little of this color. And that can be, that can roll along here, and then we can paint it out when we don't like it.
Oh, you're so good.
Well, I know all the tricks, all the nasty, cheaty tricks.
It's disgusting. Man.
So now what you might want to do is, like, for example, I'm seeing in the original piece, I'm seeing right about here some smoke rising up over the buildings, just to show that it's it's a city of industry. And that's another trick that we can do. Grab some orange, and we'll just add a little bit of smoke trailing up here. And then what I'd want to do is erase it from in front, so it's running from behind just that front plane.
Yeah.
And you can do that on multiple tiers. I want to drop that back a little bit. Almost saturation, make it a little more red, and then a little softer. And then there's also this. I hadn't heard them referred to as this before, but the original painter added what we call scale birds. Scale birds simply being birds thrown in to show you how big it is. I didn't even know that was a specific term. I love
scale birds.
They're great. I realized that I always admire them, but I didn't know that they were called that. So these are just pecks.
Right, but dude, it totally sells.
Yeah, maybe so.
I love it.
Yeah. There's one nesting up by the ship there, and then because this one's purple, there's some nesting in the like a flock of them leaving the tower there.
Awesome. Super awesome.
So let's see here. What else do I got? I'm wondering what other trouble I can get into. I am noticing that if I look at the middle of the piece, the only thing that's really bugging me about it now is this section here, the flat-facing side of the building, doesn't appear to have any information on it, either light or shadow. So this is a case where I'd probably go in with a darker color. See, like a sampled dark here. Just enough to notice that there's a difference.
I see.
Here's where I want to look at my reference photo again and say, okay, you've got like a Tudor style here where you have like a white flat and then dark crisscrossing structures over the top. So we can do that here and add just enough information.
Yeah, and I honestly wouldn't go beyond that. I think that's brilliant.
Just enough to feel like, yeah, you got structure there.
Right. Really cool.
Okay, so you're the artist. What do you think this thing needs here? What would make this piece, you're looking through online and you want it to feel like this piece is going to jump out and bite you?
I think it needs a title.
A title?
A signature, and that's it. I think it's beautiful. Seriously. Just slap your name on that thing and put it up for sale someplace.
Well, I can do that. What is this? I'm tempted to give it one of those stupidly long titles. It's one of my favorite pieces is by James W. Turner, and it's called The Fighting Temeraire being towed back to her last berth to be broken up. And it's just, he named it whatever was logical. It's about a boat being towed to be destroyed. What else do you want from me?
Right.
It's a good title for this thing. Sailing into Shanghai Harbor at sunset for a nice cup of tea. I don't know.
In a junk.
In a junk.
Sold.
I like it. I like it. So now I'm just fiddling. Now I'm finding this is where I get myself in trouble because I do tend to over render, which is you just keep poking at it long after you've made your best efforts.
Right. Stop. It's great.
All right.
And I've exhausted your hour.
What's that?
I said, and I've exhausted your hour. You're done, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to call that successful. Do you have any further questions or like anything I can clarify here?
I think that watching you do it with the thing that I hate about speed painting, quote unquote tutorials, because they're not really tutorials. They're like, look at how good I am, and like there's no actual instruction going on. This was immensely helpful in that I now understand the whys and wherefores and the theory behind some of this. So before we meet again,
you gonna try this?
Yeah, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try 2 of them. So when is good for you to meet again?
Tell you what, normally I would be right off the cuff to give you a date, but since we're going to be moving here in the next couple of weeks, my schedule's in flux. So let me ping you as soon as I know my move dates, and we'll find a time.
I love it.
Sound good?
That sounds brilliant.
Okay, then as always, I'm going to save this PSD off. Man, my layers of gibberish here. I'm going to save my PSD off and let you poke around with it and modify it as you see fit. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And when you have inspiration for the pieces you want to paint, ping me and let me see them.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been art tutorial number 3 with the amazing Chris Madden. I've been your host and student, Frank Fradella. We'll see you next time. Take care.